I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of Seeds of War, no other than Mr. Joao Silva. Welcome, Mr. Silva.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joao Silva. I'm author of the upcoming debut novel. It's an epic fantasy called Seeds of War. It's the first book in the Smokesmiths series, and yeah, so that's my current project. I've also been published at Grimdark magazine and Haven Speculative magazine, and I've been part of the jury for the British Fantasy Awards a couple of times.
What are the classification of a good novel or a good stories that you can share to us?
Yeah, I think what makes a good novel is a combination of multiple factors. Actually, I think the most important one for me is the ability to keep the reader engaged and turning the pages. And the author can do this in multiple ways, but they're all together and combined, in my opinion. So I think the main important factors are the characters. I think if the characters are not engaging, most readers tend to stop reading the novel. And then you have the plot, which is a similar thing. If nothing is happening in the book, then good chances are that the reader is also not going to want to know what's happening next, and they're going to put the book down. Um, I also think especially in fantasy, I think having a good, complex, and engaging and mysterious world building is a very big plus. And I think some readers alone stay reading the book if they're engaged by the world and if they think the world is well crafted and well designed. And then I would say also quite an interesting and perhaps important point is the prose. I think personally, I don't think I'm much of a prose author. Like it's not something I really focus on, and I don't personally like very lyrical prose. But I think there's something very interesting about doing something in a very workmanlike way, if you want to, or something very poetic. So all of this stuff combined can keep the reader engaged in the book, and I think the best authors are the ones who are able to sort of combine all of these factors into one and really make the book shine.
Very well said, Mr. Silva. And writing is your profession or you have another job?
No, I wish writing was my profession, but I actually write research papers and just research for energy and climate and renewable energy. Yes.
Wow, sounds interesting. It's outside of our topic, but let's talk about climate change.
Yeah, it's it's really bad, and it's gotten worse. And I think part of my day job as a researcher is to alert people and to basically tap into what is happening right now and what can be done to prevent the collapse from coming in the future. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. It doesn't really come across in my books, but it's something I strongly believe that we need to do more for climate change.
So, do you think in the future you can write a book about climate change as a novel or as an academic book?
No, I actually have the outline for sort of, I wouldn't say it's necessarily solar punk, but it is along the lines of climate science fiction. And I have the outline. I haven't started writing it yet, but I have the ideas and I have the structure all in an Excel spreadsheet. So at some point when I'm done with my current series, I might actually get to that.
Perfect, Mr. Silva, because that's what we need to be aware of what's happening to the world. We just celebrate Earth Day, I think, last week, and we need to aware of what's happening. Climate change, people in Canada, we every Summer, we are burning. North
Yeah.
America.
Yeah,
So
it's a big issue, and especially where I'm from in Portugal, we have exactly the same issue. Every summer, July, August, there's massive wildfires, and yeah, it's pretty crazy that we just allow it to happen.
what is the big difference of being a writer of a novel and a researcher?
Uh, there are some differences, but actually there's a lot of overlapping in between the skill sets. So part of my day job as a researcher actually consists in going around finding a lot of information, doing some studies, doing research, as the name indicates. And I kind of have to do the same for my books, for my fiction books. And it's similar in the sense that I have to do research about topics that I'm interested in to incorporate into the book. I have to research certain characters, certain histories, certain cultures. And the research side of it, I think being a researcher as a day job actually helped me do some research for my fiction books. And at the same time, because English is actually not my first language, so I was born and raised Portuguese. I only came to the UK less than 10 years ago. So writing in English is something that requires constant practice for me and constant dedication and persistence. So being a researcher and having to write daily reports and weekly reports and monthly reports in English about serious topics and about in a way that people can understand, um, I think that has helped me tremendously growing as a fiction writer as well.
Definitely. I have a regular guest here, Luis Magalhães. He's a Portuguese fantasy novel too. So let's talk about Seeds of War. How did you crafted it?
It's a very long process. So I actually started writing it in the very first few months of the pandemic. So that's back in the spring of 2020. Um, I didn't really have anything else to do, as most people did, as I was basically outside of my day job. I didn't have anything else to do, and the ideas started coming. I started recycling some other ideas from other projects that I had on the shelf, and essentially the book ended up the first draft ended up coming together by the end of maybe September of 2020, and then I left it to kind of for a month just to have some perspective, and then I went back to it, and then I polished it, revised it some more, and then I sent it back to beta readers, and yeah, and then it's just went from there, just multiple stages of development, editing, more polishing, more editing, more development. But essentially, about the story itself is it's pretty gritty epic fantasy story. So I think in the spectrum of Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones, I would say it's more aligned with Game of Thrones in the sense that the characters are not necessarily nice people that I would like to have a coffee with. Um, if I probably saw them face to face, I would probably run away because I know what they're capable of. So in that sense, I wouldn't want to be friends with my characters. But I think that's also what makes them interesting. They're so unpredictable. At the same time, they're so dangerous. Their pasts are super interesting and captivating. And I guess that's what I wanted to do with this series. I wanted to write a series that's um, basically without a stereotypical protagonist. I was a little tired of the farm boy that becomes the hero and is super good and everybody loves him and he loves everyone. And I wanted to write about people who are not often heard or not often seen or not often protagonists. And so we have my main cast of characters, which is three main point of view characters. The first one is Gimlor, and she's essentially a war veteran, and she's a single mother as well. And now she just became a crime boss. And basically, that was my uh, homage to people who have to raise children by themselves and they still have to figure out where they fit into the world, but also trying to not lose their own sense of self and their own identity. And then my second point of view character was Orberesis, and he's essentially a street urchin and who grew up on the streets, orphan, and he basically became a criminal, like a petty thief and a con man. He realized he was really good at lying, and he just became a con man. And and then he stumbled upon a magical orb that conducted the miracle, and now he's parading himself, calling himself God. And then somehow people believe him, and he just has a massive legion of followers, even though he is absolutely not a god, and he's just lying to them all, essentially. Um, and the third main point of view character is a mercenary. It's actually an old man. This is an older character. Is in the late years of his life, and his name is Red now. And he has a very fierce reputation. He's feared across the world, but he's broken by the loss of his sister, and he has to figure out a way to basically retire without putting in jeopardy everything that he built in his life. He doesn't want this band of mercenaries to basically be lost to the wind. He wants to make sure that the whoever replaces him as the leader of the band becomes a successful leader, and basically doesn't have to worry about the future of the band.
Sounds interesting, Mr. Silva. What age do you realize that you are good in writing?
I would say it's something that I've always liked doing. Ever since I was in elementary school, writing was always my favorite part of the little tests that they did. And then it was the same in middle school. And in high school, I didn't really study for any of the tests, and I always got really good grades. And I think the difference was back then I was doing it for pleasure, for my passion. I just liked doing it, but I never really considered that it was something that I could potentially be doing in the future as an adult. Because everybody said, yeah, writers don't make any money, writers are always broke, just writing is so difficult. And all of those things are true, ironically. But like if people don't believe that they can do it, then it's going to become very hard for them to actually be able to do it. So yeah, it was actually really, really young that I realized I wanted to be a writer. I think I've always wanted to be a writer. There's just different degrees of seriousness to according to which I was pursuing the dream.
Who influenced you in your writing?
There's actually a lot of influences, and in terms of authors, I would say probably Joe Abercrombie and Brendan Sanderson, and it's in very different ways. Joe Abercrombie, I really like his gritty style and the fact that he's able to really craft really interesting, flawed characters and characters who are not good people, and they're just super interesting to follow. And Brendan Sanderson, he's the total opposite. And I'm not super in love with his characters, but I really admire his ability to do world building and to craft magic systems and to essentially come up with a completely alien world out of nowhere and make it work in a way that is believable and conceivable. So when I first started writing, I was like, man, I really wish I could emulate those qualities from these two writers in my own writing. So I tried to do characters that were flawed and they were not good people. But Joe Abercrombie's books tend to be very low on the magic side, and I really like a book that's heavy on the magic. So I wanted gritty characters like Joe Abercrombie, but I also wanted heavy world building and heavy magic systems like Sanderson. And I would say that's kind of the inspiration that I took for Seeds of War and for some of the writing that I do.
Very well said, Mr. Silva. Seeds of War, do you think this is your big achievement?
So far, I think it is. Just a few years ago, I didn't even know I could finish a novel. So in that sense, it was the first novel that I have ever finished, and it was the first novel that I got to the end, and I'm like, wow, I really like this, and I I'm proud of the writing that I did there, and I really think people will enjoy it if they give it a shot. If they do like these type of books, epic fantasy and gritty and dark books, I think there's quite a good chance that they're going to like it. And yeah, and it's basically something that I'm very proud of. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to write something that I'm even more proud of in the future. But right now, I think from everything that I've written, including short stories and all the other unpublished novels that I've got in my trunk, um, I think this one would be always the one that I'm most proud of, at least for now.
Yes, indeed. So, Seeds of War, what behind the title of your debut novel?
Yeah, so the title is actually, there's actually multiple meanings to it. And I don't really want to spoil it too much, but one of the meanings is a way to basically say that the war is brewing. So it's the start of something. It's the start of um, peace being broken, and basically different players and different parts of the world are moving to something that's probably going to be pretty brutal, and that's a war. And there's also another meaning with something that happens at the end of the book, which I'm not gonna. I don't really want to say it at the moment because of spoiler reasons. Yeah.
Yes, sounds interesting, people.
Yeah. So it's not pre-published, but it's essentially, I personally sent a few PDF copies or EPUB copies of the book to a few reviewers and people who are interested in the book, in exchange for an honest review. So the idea is I send them the book, and prior to the publication date, they're able to read it and they review it. And even if it's a low rating, or even if it's a 1 star, 2 star review, that's fine. Like as long as it's an honest review, that's what I'm looking for. So I sent the book to quite a few reviewers, and yeah, I'm quite happy that so far the reviews have been very positive.
Yes, so do you think negative reviews make you perfect in the future?
Yeah, I think reviews are generally not for me. Reviews are for readers. So usually, reviews basically exist to tell other readers whether or not they should read and buy the book. So I don't really take reviews as feedback for the author. For me, normally, like, I'm seeking reviews because I want readers to find the book on Goodreads or on Amazon, and they see, oh, there's quite a few reviews already, and the rating is actually decent. Maybe I'll give it a shot. So I'm not really taking the reviews as in something for me to improve, or like I have to you know change based on the reviews. I'm actually probably not going to read a lot of the negative reviews just for my mental health point of
Yes,
view.
yes.
But I think obviously the reviews are a good indication of the way each reader experienced the book. So if a reader had a bad experience with the book and they rate the book 1 star, that's a perfectly valid review, as long as they explain what didn't work for them, and the things that made it such a bad experience. I think that's a perfectly valid review.
Yes, definitely. And congratulations for your marketing strategy, right?
Thank you.
And according to Esme Rosalind, Seed of War instantly became one of my most anticipated release from the moment I first heard about it. I mean, who would not be sold on a book with a premise of destructive smoke magic and cover that is this insanely gorgeous and alluring? Oh, congratulations for your cover. It's so awesome.
Thank you.
It's like what do you call this, it's like a motion picture.
Yeah, I mean that was the idea. So I really wanted the feel and the atmosphere of the book to come across in the page. And I think the artists that I commissioned at Mibble Art, I think they really did an outstanding job. So like the cover is essentially the character, and there's a lot of smoke, and it's kind of a battlefield, and obviously the smoke plays a big part of the book. And I really wanted that to come across in the cover. I really wanted that to be the intriguing and the mysterious factor that gets people talking about it.
Yes, it's superb, Mr. Silva.
Thank
And
you.
according to Mr. Craig Bookworm. Seeds of War is a dark and gritty exploration of a human condition through three desperate POV characters motivated by pain, trauma, or circumstance and necessity. So, do you think did you achieve the darkness and grittiness of your writing?
I think I don't really set out to write gritty and to write dark. I think it just comes across like that. At least that's up for the readers to judge. Really, I think I like I tend to like darker movies and darker books and darker content with just darker themes in general, and where characters are not really heroes. I tend to really like villains and anti-heroes. So I guess my writing, it just comes across that way. People usually, so far, they've said it's dark and gritty and the world is brutal, and I think if people say that, if the reviewers say that, then I guess I have to take their word for it. But yeah, like, so I didn't write like that on purpose. I think it just comes across based on my inspirations, based on just the type of books and the type of content that I like to read and watch in general.
Yes, very well said, Mr. Silva. So before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Finland. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. In Osima, I got 64%, North Karelia at 7%, North Savo at 7%, Southwest Finland at 7%, Prikma at 7%, and last but not the least, North Ostrobothia at 7%. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Joao Silva. So,
Thank you so much for having me.
yes, so Mr. Silva, Seeds of War, what is the best highlight?
I would say that my favorite part is the climax at the end of the book, and it's the one that I had the most fun writing, and it's the one that I think all of the mysteries and all of the surprises and all the plot twists take place. That's where all the character arcs and in general, I think that's the part of the book that I'm most proud of. And if people might think that the beginning of the book is a little slow, and I did that sort of on purpose. I wanted to be a slow build up to something that's truly epic at the end, and I hope I hope people get the same feeling, and I hope people get to the end of the book like, wow, what just happened? And that's just what I wanted to really achieve. And if I manage to do that, then I'll be very happy.
I think so, because according to your reviews right now, they satisfied.
Yeah, so far.
So, Seeds of War is good for a series or motion picture.
uh, I would like to say yes. I would really love to see it on the screen at one day. I mean, obviously, a man can dream. So if Netflix is listening to this, they can call me up anytime. But yeah, no, I mean, I would love to see it on the screen. Obviously, I think some of the things might be a little harder to adapt to the screen without CGI, like the smoke magic and the kind of like the alien creatures that I have in the book. But everything else seems pretty straightforward. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, only one in a million fantasy stories get adapted to the screen, so I'm not super hopeful at the moment. But you never know. You're allowed to dream.
Yes. So, Seeds of War, do you have other title beside of this first option?
Uh, Actually, the title was one of the first few things that I thought about. A lot of the book takes place in well, about a third of the book takes place in a setting which is kind of where people are sort of extracting. How do I say it without spoiling? They're extracting goods from nature, essentially. So, which is essentially farming, but not quite farming. Um, and that I think that really plays well with the name Seeds and Seeds of War. So it's also the farming aspect of it, and I think it's one of the first few things that I thought about when I had the idea for the story. I really wanted to be um, to be related to obviously to the name Seeds of War. I think it's one of the first few things I thought about. Yeah.
So do you think Seeds of War is the first installment of your trilogy or series?
Yeah, so far it's the first one. I've got the first draft of book two ready. It's called the second book is going to be called Thorns of War, and the third one I haven't quite decided on the name yet. But I'm also going to have a prequel novella that's going to come out hopefully by the end of the summer this year, and it's going to be about 100 pages long, and it's going to go for free on my or my newsletter. So whoever subscribes to my newsletter will get a free copy of this novella. Um, and the novella is going to be called Ruins of Smoke.
Wow. Interesting, Mr. Silva. So Seeds of War, what is your expectation?
Expectations. I think, guess the only really thing I would love is for people to give the book a shot and that they like it. That's really all I can expect. I mean, as soon as the book is out in the world, it's really no longer in my control. I did everything I could. I made the book as good as I could. I did the marketing strategy. I basically did everything else. And once the book is out and is being sold, it belongs to the readers, and the readers can basically decide if they like it, if they don't like it. So my expectation is that they do like it, but obviously that's completely out of my control.
Yes. So Seeds of War, if you compare to a timeless novel fantasy, which one?
Yes, if it's quite hard to just pick one of them. So I'm going to break the rules a little bit and pick more than one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, I would say the more notorious one would be Game of Thrones. Although I wouldn't say Seeds of War is necessarily like Game of Thrones. I would say the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. There's some similarities there. I would also say the Last War series by Mike Shackle. There's definitely some influences there. The War for the Rose Throne by Peter McLean. There's definitely some influences there as well. The Powder Mage trilogy by Brian McClellan. There's some influences there when it comes to the magic system. Um, yeah, maybe the Stormlight Archive from Brandon Sanderson, just in the sense of the scope of the world and the alien creatures that I've got in the book. Um, yeah, I guess there's a lot of influences. If I had to pick one, the one that really marked my experiences the most, I would probably say the Blade itself, the first Lost Years by Joe Abercrombie.
So what are your preparation in writing Seeds of War?
In terms of my skill set, or like in terms of research, what do you
Yes,
mean?
in general.
Yeah, so basically, I think everything starts with the characters, and then the characters, I try to play around with them, kind of try to write them out a little bit, try to write their backstory, their personality traits, and just kind of where they live and where they are, and how that impacts who they are and where they live. And um, and I really just play around with it, and then I kind of blend that with other ideas that I have in my folder. So I've got this folder on my laptop called Ideas folder, and essentially it's got tons and tons and tons of unique ideas of for settings, for worlds, for magic systems, for characters, for plot lines. And whenever I'm playing around and toying around with a new idea for a book, I just go to the folder and I think, oh, this idea would actually play really, really well with this one. And this magic system would actually make things work in this way. And obviously, sometimes it doesn't always work. So sometimes I have to kind of change the original idea a little bit. But it's a combination of all these factors, and because I'm writing a multi POV story, um, it becomes a little harder because obviously I have three main characters, not just one main character. So each of them deserves the stage as much as a normal main character does. And yet, because they only have one third of the story, their character arc needs to make sense in less chapters than a normal main character would, if that makes sense. So I have to really condense three character arcs with three plot lines with three different settings, and then decide how I want to converge them. And so for Seeds of War, all the three characters start out in very different parts of the world, and they go through their own journeys, and then they meet at the end. I'm not gonna spoil, but essentially they meet at the end, and that's where the climax takes place.
I think you did a great job, Mr. Silva.
Thanks.
And before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, or our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen. Food 101. Plus one more, please do grab a copy of my spring flowers because it's already spring. So beautiful. And I have a collections of flowers taken in a beautiful place in Vancouver, British Columbia. So, Mr. Silva, Seeds of War, can you please invite our listeners to buy your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you do like epic fantasy, if you do like gritty books with multiple point of view characters, very easy to digest, very character driven, very focused on the characters, but also with an engaging plot with twists and turns all around, with an engaging and unique magic system and unique creatures that I created basically. Um, if you do like these type of things that are very typical of epic fantasy, I would say that this would be the book for you. And right now, it's available on Amazon in as an ebook format for just 99 cents. So I would say it's I might be talking my book out, but I would say it's a very good value for those 99 cents.
Definitely, people. I searched on Google, why is it available in Amazon India? Why not in Amazon Canada, Amazon in. Is it all over all Amazon countries?
Yeah, it's essentially so if you can buy an ebook on Amazon from your country, then it's available. It's a worldwide. So Amazon doesn't always have stores in each country. So sometimes people from a certain country need to buy using the Amazon from another country. But essentially, it should be available worldwide.
Yes, indeed. So, Seeds of War, if you want to revise it after 10 years, which part of the book you want to revise?
Oh, that would be hard. I wouldn't say I would necessarily want to revise any part of it, at least for now. I think I'm still too attached to the way it is now, and I'm still too fresh from the last set of revisions I did, which is not too long ago, actually. So right now, like I think the book is in the best shape that I can make it. Um, I guess I would have to wait those 10 years, and I would have to see what the feedback generally is from the reviewers and from the readers. Um, I think people generally have said so far that even though they really like it so far, the beginning is a little slow. So maybe I guess that's something that I could try to make it a little bit more engaging or a little bit faster in the beginning. Although I would say like I also like the fact that it's not fast and engaging in the beginning. I like to ease the readers in and really let them find out about the characters and really spend some time in the world before things start to go crazy. So yeah, it's a tough question. I'm not really sure what I would say.
Let's support Mr. Silva for his debut novel. I hope become bestseller.
Thank you so much. I hope so too.
Yes, because if you support him, he will give his best. Because more books to come, right, Mr. Silva?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can promise something. I can promise that I will always do my best whenever I'm writing. People will not see my worst, or they will not see something that I'm just publishing just for the sake of publishing. If I publish something, it's something that I'm proud of, and it's something that I put a lot of work in. So they can definitely expect the best of me in my books.
Something timeless. Oh, wow. So, how would you refrain repetitiveness in your writing?
The repetitiveness, I would say it's a very personal thing. I think some readers think some scenes are too repetitive, or they've already kind of seen a scene like that, and they just want to experience new things. But there are other readers who would actually go the other way around and say, if you don't spend enough time and you don't really repeat those scenes well enough, then it doesn't feel like they know the character too well, or they haven't spent enough time with the character. So I would say I'm just going to go with with my own instinct, and decide if scenes are repetitive, then I'll change them. If I don't think they're repetitive, then I'll just keep them in. And then obviously I'm going to ask that feedback from my beta readers. And if the beta readers don't think it's repetitive, then I'll just keep it as it is in the book.
Very well said, Mr. Silva. Seas of War will be available this coming May 1 or available right now?
Yeah, it's available starting from the first day of May, and yeah, it's already available for pre-order as well.
Yes, people, once again, let's support Mr. Joao Silva because the book, I think, is phenomenal from the cover itself. They saying don't judge the book by its cover, by but content, but you should uh, judge the book both the cover and the content. Cover of the book is superb.
Thank you, thank you.
So, Mr. Silva, thank you for your time.
No, thanks so much for inviting me. That was great. Thank you so much. Now I'll be very glad to come back again. Yeah.
Moricon people, see you soon.